as we all knew, the Pretendos immediately came out and tried aggressively to downplay the Pokemon presentation. I heard all sorts of crazy things, like, Arlo complaining about, like, oh, there's too many TCG sets. I saw people, like, making up some weird claim that you would have to pay, like, 4 different subscription fees to play Pokemon Champions properly. Nintendo Switch Online, Pokemon Bank, the the Pokemon Champions fee in and of itself. It's just some like insane, delusional, just copium, just completely out of touch, just insane. And it's been this way for like a long time. I think even honestly, this goes back to when like Gen 2 came out and people were trying to gaslight us into thinking Pokemon was a dying fad and that Pokemania was over and that the series wouldn't be relevant going forward, and it becomes the biggest brand in the world. Bigger than that slop Star Wars, bigger than Harry Potter. Pokemon reigns supreme, and for good reason, right? These games are top notch with excellent character designs, with amazing mechanics, unforgettable iconography. Like this is a 10 out of 10 franchise that is showing no signs of slowing down, even though the community desperately is trying to find anything they possibly can to hold against the franchise. And I think the big thing right now, the thing that got my goat, watching the discourse in regards to Pokemon Legends ZA, people are complaining about the playable characters. Like, ooh, they don't look different enough. Ooh, like, they both look kind of androgynous. Ooh, Nintendo is making our male and female leads non-binary. Ooh. Like, it's the biggest cope I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is like the reality of the situation, I think, is that Pokemon haters see that woke culture is becoming increasingly unpopular, that it's a big buzzword, and so they desperately try and throw woke allegations at Pokemon. And because Pokemon isn't actually a woke IP, they have to go to insane lengths to try and pretend it is. Like I heard someone complain about how the Floette that that AZ has in the game is referred to as a female. Like, oh no, they use she. Like gendered pronouns are in Pokemon now. That means they're going woke, I guess. Like, it's like, what? Huh? I heard some insane wokey try and say that, like, oh wow, the rival character is non-binary and will choose to be the opposite gender you are. And it's just like, these are different characters, genius. It's just this insane, just cope, trying to act as if there's some massive conspiracy about Pokemon character designs. And you've seen this, like, a little bit in, like, message boards and stuff like that. Like, oh, man, they're throwing more and more diversity in there. Like, Gen 5, like, we've been, ever since they started going to regions, like, outside of Japan, yes, we have been getting different cultures represented, and that's not inherently a bad thing, Like, people keep crying about, like, like words like appearance being used in trailers, instead of what actually happens in the game. Like, the narrative right now when it comes to, like, from the anti-woke side is that Pokemon is trying to implement type A and type B aspects into their characters, and yet you can clearly see that isn't the case from the trailer, because you have a clearly defined male and female character, and the one you choose will always have a rival of the opposite gender. Clearly the the narrative that clearly the narrative that Pokemon is like wokeifying the protagonists or wokeifying the trainers has completely fallen flat. You know, especially considered Legends Arceus, which goes so far into anti-woke territory, it's not even really funny. Like, considering what the series has been doing lately, it's kind of laughable, honestly, that people are still pushing this idea, this idea that Pokemon is just going woke. It's it's on the way out. You know, that's the reality of this. You know, any aspects of woke culture that are creeping in are not going to be um, implemented going forward as more and more we start to phase this stuff out and move on to like the next major cultural shift, right? Like, I don't deny there have definitely been like things that the Pokemon Company and Nintendo of America have done that lean into woke culture, but saying they're like outright believers and that they're gonna like ruin the brand because of this is so laughably off base, it's not even really funny. You know, like, just compare the seething about the word appearance being used in a Pokemon trailer versus like the vast damage control you see for Stellar Blade costumes being censored, or uh, the gay romance being the biggest focus in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, right? You know, there are other developers that have clearly dropped the ball so much harder that it's really impossible to take anybody complaining about the way characters in Pokemon look seriously. And this isn't the first time this has come up, right? You know, everybody was coping and seething about like, uh, you know, I remember when Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out, and they tried downplaying that, calling it woke, but nothing in the base game in that game was woke at all, right? You know, Scarlet and Violet was just a really spectacular gen all around, and this idea that people had that the series is just going to go down this path where it just pushes this kind of propaganda onto kids. I think they are vastly underestimating just how, because of the online fan base culture, fandom culture, that simply isn't going to be possible. You know, so much of Pokemon revolves around the community. So much of it revolves around, you know, people who like the brand and just do a great job of just keeping it like of being passionate about the world and the characters and the design and the lore and stuff like that. Like, it is going to be next to impossible to try and subvert something like this. You know, I think Lord of the Rings is another really good example of this, where you have this one story, this one book that people have been trying to pervert for a long time. You know, when it comes to those original movies, to like the new Netflix, the new Amazon Prime series, like, they have been trying really hard to try and weaponize it against the public for a long time, and yet it just doesn't matter because the actual fans know what the brand actually is, and just automatically just debunk any attempt at infiltration. And Pokemon, where it is now, it's going to take years and years of like a complete Marxist takeover to get anywhere near where we are in the West, right? And considering what culture is dying here, like, it just isn't going to happen. That's kind of my vibe on this at this stage, especially when you're seeing things like you know, male and female genders being in Xenoblade Chronicles X, right? You know, when you see like more and more people start to realize that the they them thing is a complete hoax, like, this culture isn't going to survive the next decade, in my opinion. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see where we are 10 years from now.